one of the classes, and I'll ask the same question. Who here is in sales? You, one, couple? Who here wants to go into sales? A few of you? Okay. Here's what I think. As someone who is very reluctant to go into sales, I kind of went in kicking and screaming. I think every one of us is in sales already. We have been our entire lives. I think if you influence people, I look at my kids, I have 3 kids. I'll show you a picture here in a minute, but they're the best sales people in the world. I mean, they can negotiate and talk mom and dad into stuff. I remember growing up too, I used to love baseball cards and football cards. I don't know, is that still a thing or no? Card, like collectibles or whatever. Pokemon, I know I see some kids doing, like you're learning sales and all that. All sales is, this is a big change for me. It's about influencing something or someone. And I think when I first got into it, I felt like, I don't want to get into sales. I got a college degree. Why would I go into sales? And you kind of think about like a used car salesman or woman. And I think it's the wrong way to think about it. I think sales is a really cool thing to go into. And again, it doesn't matter what, you could be a school teacher, you're in sales because you're influencing. So, and by the way, I've got a box of books here. So there's like 60 or so. So feel free, everybody can grab one on the way out. I'm not going to go into a lot of the depth of the book because I'm going to go more into a sales piece, but I want to share some context with you a little bit. This is my family, and I think when I think about sales or just life in general, I think it's important to get personal and to show you a glimpse of this. So I've got 3 kids, Gabe, Reese, and Emerson. They're 16, 15, and 10. We live outside of Columbus in a town called New Albany. Anybody from Columbus here? Yeah, a couple, cool. I've met people from like California today and Arizona. I mean, it's awesome that so many. So where's everybody from? Are you guys from like far away? Who's from the furthest? Alaska, someone said. Somewhere. Is the Alaska person here? No? Are you the furthest? California? Anybody outside of California? Okay, so everybody been to Columbus before? Yeah, so Columbus, we were talking at dinner, booming town, it's crazy. I live about 2 miles from the new Intel manufacturing plant that's going up. So if you know anything about that, it's like a $30 billion plant that may turn into $100 billion because it's gonna be the largest US manufacturing plant for chips. It's gonna be awesome. So again, work for CCC, we're a $7 billion tech company, went public about 3 years ago. Crazy journey. It's been really fun to help grow. We're close to $1 billion in revenue, so $7 billion market cap. And then 2 years ago, I wrote this book, and now I do speaking and some different things with the book. Okay, so let me give you the backstory a little bit because I think it's really important to paint the picture. So this is, you can tell it's lit up. That's me, maybe a little more hair, some sideburns. This is at Bowling Green, so this is after during my sophomore season. I'm not going to say the year because I'm going to date myself, but I'm a little older than you guys. But I share this because this is probably the pinnacle of my soccer career. Sophomore year, we just won the MAC championship at Western Michigan. I started the game. However, by the time my senior year came around, I was one of the last guys off the bench. We played Indiana University in the Sweet 16 in the NCAA tournament. It's on national TV. I didn't get into the game to the 80th minute. I got the ball. As soon as I got in, we're down 1-0. I was a left midfielder. Either you guys midfielders? Any left footers? No, so left foot's kind of rare, right? So I was the guy on the left-hand side. My calling card was to cross the ball in. That's how I earned a scholarship, and it played my whole life to figure out how to do that. It got to the point where I couldn't execute in the moment. And so at that moment, 10 minutes left, playing against the #1 team in the country, I get the ball, a chance to go tie the game. I cross the ball over, it goes right to the goalie. They come down, they score goals 2, 3, and 4 within like 5 minutes. Game's over, my college career is over. And I share that story because it's a story of struggle that started actually about 10 years before that I didn't even know it at the time. So I talk a lot in the book about awareness. But when I was in 5th grade, I came home from school one time and my mom said, your dad is in the hospital. He had a nervous breakdown. And I didn't know what a nervous breakdown was. I was 11 or 12 years old. And so we go to visit him in the hospital. We come home, and Dad comes home, and we never talk about it. Like, we just sweep it under the rug. The family never talked about it. And I lived a pretty normal childhood for the most part. I never had any mental health issues at the time growing up. And then all of a sudden I got to school and probably partying a little too much, if I'm being honest. I came home from school after my freshman year, so before this season. My parents get in a big fight. There's always financial challenges in the house. And my dad gets home from work. He was a college professor. Gets home, and there wasn't dinner on the table. He gets mad. My mom takes a $20 bill, rips it up. Dad goes outside into the garage and grabs a baseball bat. Comes back in, and thankfully I'm there. I paint the story. He didn't hit my mom, thankfully. I was there. I grab the bat. I throw it down. My mom leaves. Their marriage is over at that point. Dad cries in my arm, first time. He's an old school Italian guy, first time he ever cried. I've seen him cry, and he's apologizing to me. And so I didn't do, what happened was I didn't feel like I could grieve that. Like I felt like it was them that were having the issue in getting the divorce, and I imagine there may be some divorce, you may have divorced parents, some of you. I didn't know it at the time, but I just didn't have the awareness and the strength to know, like, look, I'm grieving too. So I go back to school. I don't say anything to my coaches or teammates. I just go and I just start to train. And the first moment, I'll remember this to this day, we had to do this 2-mile run called the Cooper test in preseason. Do you guys know what that is, Cooper test? 2 miles in 12 minutes. Do you have to do it now?
We don't do it.
It's terrible. I mean, back-to-back 6-minute miles. Anybody a runner in the room? It's pretty, yeah, like pretty hard to run back-to-back 6 minutes, but you probably like, nah, I do. Oh, so you,
not that fast.
Okay, yeah, it's hard. So I could run it at peak shape probably around 12 minutes, maybe a little less. So for the first time I was running and I felt like something cracking, like from a mindset standpoint, that just something wasn't right, and I ran it at this point in like 14 minutes. So I kind of knew there was some stuff going on, but again, didn't do anything about it. I did not go to teammates or coaches and said something's going on. So I was able to still navigate this and still at times be really good and perform on the field, but eventually I cracked. And then again, as I told the story, it was pretty much the last guy off the bench my senior year. So what happens is, for a guy like me, I grew up with no faith, essentially. I grew up in Cleveland, rarely went to church. I did get baptized, but it was just checking the box. And I went to college, never went to church in college, never even, I mean, God forbid, utter the name of Jesus was almost like a sin to say the name. Like that's kind of how it was in my family. If you ever said, my family used to make fun of born-again Christians, like it was this weird, crazy cult thing. It was just kind of how I was raised. And when I cracked and was struggling to figure things out, my identity was in a soccer ball. I didn't have Jesus at the time. So I went into probably 10 plus years of significant depression, anxiety. I thought about killing myself at times, was partying way too much. I did get a job with this same company I'm still with. I was able to hide it. I was able to still be somewhat successful in the business world. But then about 10 years down the line, I started to feel that cracking even more and more. And so, and by the way, I was speaking to doctors, I was on some medication trying to figure things out. But I started to have panic attacks when I would speak. So I'd get up in front of the room, and I first started in my career as a trainer. So I would get up and train people on software, and then eventually got into sales. And so speaking was never a big thing. I felt fine with it. But I was almost going crazy of sorts, because these like thoughts would come in, and then I would like lose track of my thoughts, to the point where I was in Chicago at a presentation for a sales meeting, and it happened. I fake a headache. I leave the room, I go up into the hotel room, I sleep, I come down. It's very embarrassing. I come down for dinner. And that was a wake-up call for me. At the time, I thought it was the worst thing ever, worst day of my life. Looking back, it's the best thing that ever happened to me, and here's why. So it made me rethink this whole idea of vulnerability and this whole concept of it's okay to not be okay. And this is what I talk to a lot of people about, especially in the business world. So a guy like me who now leads a sales team of many millions of dollars, not a lot of people talk about this stuff. And I just I think it's incredible, Christian school. I was actually talking to a group of guys last week. I'm in a men's group in Columbus. It's called Truth at Work. It's a bunch of Christian businessmen. And I said, look, I'm going to Cedarville, and I'm going to talk about sales, but these guys don't need to hear the gospel. They don't need to hear about Jesus, because they've got that figured out. And these guys are like, no, John, the CEO of 104.9 The River, I don't know if you guys know that radio station, he went to Cedarville, Bill Montgomery. He said, John, no, they need to hear the gospel. Like those students could be some of the students that are actually struggling. Even though they maybe committed their life to Jesus, maybe they need that message. So I said, okay, I'm going to talk about sales, but I'm going to bring a little more of that message. So what happened was I went through this battle and trying to figure things out. Still seeing therapists, still trying, almost lost my marriage, my family over this. And I had a pastor I met with, I was telling Will, we just did a podcast, and it was 2015, so only 9 years ago. And he said, John, have you really drawn a line in the sand and committed your life to Jesus? And I said, no, I don't know what you mean. He goes, no, I mean, like, we're going to say a prayer right now. We're going to get down on our knees, and we're going to say that prayer right now. I said, let's do it. So October 21st, 2015, we got down on our knees, New Albany Presbyterian Church, gave my life to Jesus, and my life changed from that point forward. So for the first time in my life, I got my own Bible. For the first time in my life, I read the Bible front to back. I had never done that. I actually, growing up Catholic, again, pretty lukewarm, but anytime I did have the Bible in church, like, God forbid you never wrote in it or highlighted it or anything like that. So, and all these things kept happening. God kept putting all these people in my place. Another vice president at CCC that I worked with, I started to interview people. So I had a couple decent years under my belt work-wise, and I wanted to get better. I just didn't want to get complacent. And so I interviewed a few of my colleagues, and one of them said, I said, what do you do? How do you start your day? And he said, well, I get on the treadmill, and I listen to Right Now Media. You guys, anybody know Right Now Media? It's a faith-based, like a Netflix kind of. I'm like, oh, cool. So wait, you're not getting up and dialing for dollars and like going to close all the business and close all the sales? He's like, no. I spend my first hour of my day working on myself and spending time with God. And so here I am in the Bible for the first time, like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. And I learned about this concept called chair time, which is literally the first hour of every day. You get in the Word and you do a devotional and you read and you journal and you do stuff like that. And it completely changed my life to the point where now, telling this story, I used to be afraid to tell it. Again, I used to have panic attacks speaking, so to be able to, I pinch myself that I get to be able to share this message with folks like you, because it's a huge blessing. And this is the Bible verse or verses that really changed everything for me. So as I was reading the Bible, and you guys I know have read this, but I'll read it too. So, but it's 2 Corinthians 12. So Paul asked Jesus to remove the thorn, and he says, but he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Therefore, I will boast all the more gladly about my weaknesses, so that Christ's power may rest on me. That is why, for Christ's sake, I delight in weaknesses and insults and hardships and persecutions and difficulties. For when I am weak, then I am strong. And so I realized if my story impacted one person, it was worth telling. And I just started sharing the story. So I started to get asked to come in to talk to sports teams, started in New Albany, and then I got asked to talk to some other teams. And then, believe it or not, I got asked to go and speak back at CCC, the same room that I had that panic attack in. Like 3 years later, I went and did a talk. And it was unbelievable just to be able to share the story. And typically when I share this, it's pretty incredible, especially for guys. Like guys, we're taught we never show weakness, right? It's kind of maybe different for some of you guys, but I don't know, that's how I was taught. So to be able to have someone and show, and it's not just for guys, it's for women as well. But my message there is it's okay to not be okay, right? It really is. Like, don't suffer in silence. If you're going through something, get the help you need, whether it's professional help. There's no shame in taking medication. But I think for me, the greatest doctor is Jesus Christ. I mean, that's it. And so you guys are, I know it's beautiful. I feel the love on the campus. I've been here all day. It's been incredible. This is not normal, right? I mean, I know there's other Christian schools out there, but it's a special place. So take advantage of it. You were sharing your story earlier about being in Europe. I mean, this is pretty incredible. Can you share with the group your story? Would you mind? Can I put you on the spot?
So I went to Europe last semester, and I was traveling for like the second half of my time in Europe. And I was at a hostel in Germany, and it was a mixed dorm hostel. So I met two guys from my room and went downstairs and hung out for the evening. And one was from Canada and one was from Mexico, like the border. He went to school in the States, but he lived on the border of Mexico or whatever. The one guy was a teacher from Canada, real successful architect. But we just got to talking, and we got to talking about the gospel and religion, and I got to share that I was a Christian, but not just a Christian, like I had a relationship with God. And the Canadian looked at me, he's like, "Do you really believe that?" And I was like, "Yeah, I believe in God." He's like, "Do you really look at me and tell me you believe with all your heart that you love God?" And I was like, "I love God with my whole heart." And he's like, "Wow." And then the guy, the architect, he was kind of like fighting it the whole time, and then towards the end, he was just like softening towards the idea. And so it was just cool to see, because the Canadian was like, "You really impacted my life. It might sound weird, but we've only known each other today, but you impacted my life." And the guy from Mexico was like, invited himself to my wedding. Which is not like I'm getting married, but it was cool.
I love that. And I shared at dinner, like, don't underestimate the power of what you can share with somebody, right? You never know whose heart you're going to touch. People need to hear the message. Thanks for sharing that. Okay, so through that process, as I was writing the book, and the other thing I did too is, I mentioned this a couple times today. Forgive me if did I talk about Toastmasters in here? I don't think so. Does anybody ever been to Toastmasters? It's a speaking club. Like you go, and basically it's a very non-pressure filled way. You go for like an hour and a half every week, and you practice speaking. It's actually a really cool way to become a good presenter. And so part of my process was to really try and build up and go and put the work in to rebuild those muscles. Has anybody read the book or heard of Atomic Habits by James Clear? Yeah, awesome. So James lives in Columbus, just up the street. He's in Bexley, Ohio. So James, I've been following him forever. He's a good friend, and he's got his message is great. It's all about the power of 1% better every day. And even though I was a fairly high-level soccer player growing up, I never really got that. Like, focus on the process, and the outcome's going to take care of itself. So I'd even equate that to Bible reading, right? Devotionals. Focus on the process. Just put the time in. You're going to plant seeds. God's going to plant seeds in your heart, and then that harvest may not come for a while, but you just got to keep putting in the time. So 3 things that the book is about. So self-intention, so build yourself. But here's the key, so you can serve others. It's not a selfish thing. And I'll get into the sales aspect of this, because here's the thing. Sales is inherently selfish. Like, you are paid to go out. I'm paid to go out and sell millions of dollars of deals, and I make money when I go out or my team goes out and sells. So, of course, like, I'm going to go out and try to make money. But it wasn't until I changed from just a me-first, very selfish way. During all that time, I was a very selfish sales rep. I was just in survival mode. And I lost one account, big account, and I had another customer that was going to leave us and go to a competitor. And it was because I wasn't serving them. I was good friends with everybody, but I wasn't really authentically serving them. I just wanted to make money off the business. So it changed my entire perspective. My entire career changed when I realized, okay, serve first. So that's all sales is, really. I talked about influence, but it's really, if you can figure out how to serve somebody and solve problems, oh my gosh, a lot of good stuff happens. And then, of course, the foundation here for me is certainly identity, and God is such an important thing. So the 3 things that, from a with intention standpoint, I think, so results, are important. I'm not going to sugarcoat that. Like, you've got to you guys are here in an entrepreneurship group. Like, business is about results. You got to figure out a way to get the results. Maximize your influence. And then finally, probably the most important thing is fulfillment. Like, if you're working a job that's not fulfilling, it's only going to be okay for so long. Like, you're going to get burnt out. So I said something in the class earlier, like, your 20s, someone said this to me. Too late, I didn't realize this. I think they said it a few years back. Your 20s are for learning, and your 30s and beyond are for earning. I think it's a really powerful message. So as you guys go out into the world, don't be afraid to try something, whether it's starting a business or a job or career. Like, look, I'm 48 years old, and I'm thinking about a career change. I'm thinking about leaving my software gig and going full-time into this writing business and consulting and those sorts of things. And there's days I'm like, did I really get into the right career? So I say that in all honesty, like, there's people still trying to figure it out. So if you're someone that doesn't have it figured out yet, don't be alarmed. You'll be fine. And just try stuff out. I mean, you'll find what you're passionate. If you find what you're passionate about, it leads to a pretty fulfilling work life, and then, the money's going to come with that. Okay, so let me share the model for with intention self. So this is 5 steps. I'm not going to go in depth here because just for time purposes, I'm going to get to more of the sales piece. But 5 steps I think are the key to continuous improvement. So awareness, that's just really understanding where you are today. And I'm happy to see some of you taking notes. I'm happy to share the deck. You can share it with anybody. Awareness is where you are today. Agency is taking ownership of that. Ambition is your future state, so where you want to go. Action is taking action to close the gap from your current state to your future state. And then adjustment is adjust as you go. So the reason I created a wheel, there's an author that's probably before you guys were born, Jim Collins. He's still around a little bit. He wrote a book called Good to Great. Anybody heard of that book, Good to Great? Great book. He studied a lot of companies, but he found that the best companies had a flywheel where they would have a process in place that just over time would the momentum would drive itself. So I found this for myself, and then when I'm coaching other people or working with my sales team, having all these 5 things in place. And again, if you read the book, you'll get more depth with that. I did want to share this because I built this matrix because I think it's pretty important, and there's a biblical piece to this I'll share too. But let me just walk you through this a little bit. I'll come here. You guys can look there or here if you want. So this is competence or your strengths. So you have high and low, and then awareness, low and high. Okay. So if you think about it, if you're low awareness, low strength, that's an unknown weakness. Okay. If you know about your weaknesses, that's high awareness and low strength. High strength, but low awareness is an unknown strength. And then if you're high in both areas, it's a known strength. Okay. So here's the learning in this. If you don't know, this is a red flag. This is a blind spot. As you go into your career, and I would argue even now, you need to be diligent about trying to understand what your blind spots are. And there's a lot of ways to do that. There's a lot of assessments you can take. There's trusted advisors. There's people you can ask. But I think you need to really figure out what your blind spot is or blind spots. We all have them, by the way. A known weakness is simply an obstacle. Has anybody ever heard of StrengthsFinder 2.0? It's an assessment tool and book. Yeah, and it's awesome, and I recommend everybody should take it. If you buy the book, I think it's $20. You get a free assessment with it. But what StrengthsFinder talks about is, you want to focus on your strengths, but you want to contain your weaknesses. So it actually teaches so soccer guys, right? You had had a terrible right foot. Well, I try to figure out a way to manipulate it so I would play to my left foot. So you just contain the weakness. Now you can improve it, of course, and maybe get to a strength. But I think the key here is taking a blind spot and just making it a weakness that you can contain. But to me, here's where the magic is. It's how do you take your talents and turn them into superpowers? So a lot of people have latent talents that just haven't been developed. I believe God created us all to have gifting. Every one of you has a gift inside of you. And your job, I think, is to the world is to fulfill that potential. I really think that. In fact, it's on your wall out there. I love this quote. I took this picture this morning when I was here. And it says, steward your God-given gifts for God's glory, and every day matters. So I think that, to me, if you can figure out how to live into your strengths, and I know there's biblical teaching on that. I think there's actually a lot of Christian assessments, and I can't even tell you exactly which ones, but I think it's a powerful thing. I think a lot of times we focus too much on weaknesses and not enough on strengths. Everybody's got them. You just got to be diligent to seek them out. Okay, the other part of the with intention wheel is others. So again, it's how do you build yourself so that you can serve others. It's a both and. This has an acronym that spells serve, and I'll go through these quickly too. So sincerity, so being authentic, and this is the part of the sales piece. You got to be authentic when you sell or when you're in business. People read, and if it's BS, they're gonna read through it. The second piece is empathy. So how do you put yourself in someone else's shoes? It's the best way to sell. If you can actually put yourself in the customer's perspective and know how they're thinking and be very curious and ask a lot of questions and really care, that's magic. Third is resourcefulness. So you got to figure out how to get the job done. So I told you the story a little bit, how I was not getting the job done for our clients. I was too focused on the relationship, not focused enough on the value and the results. So you got to figure out a way. Those two are really combined. Get the job done, that resourcefulness, and also add value in every interaction. And then finally, what energy do you bring to the table? And I would invite you to consider even how you're showing up in the room tonight, in your class tomorrow, with your friends, however. Do you bring positive energy? Are you an energy builder, or are you an energy drainer? We used to read a book with my kids called How Full Is Your Bucket? And the concept is a kid's book, children's book. Has anybody ever read that, heard of it? How full is your bucket? The idea is like everybody has a bucket of water on their head, and your job is to fill that bucket and not take water out of the bucket. A lot easier said than done. I think about my kids who sometimes fight, and I'm like, oh man, Gabe, you got to fill Reese's bucket. But I think it's, if you become someone that's an energy filler in the room and a connector, people are going to gravitate towards you. They really are. Okay, I'm going to jump into sales now. I'll pause for a second. Does anybody have any questions on what I've shared thus far? And I know we're going to have Q&A at the end, or networking or whatever, so we can dive, and I'm happy to dive in one-on-one too as we go. Okay, so what I did, this is not typically what I present, but I wanted to give something special for you guys. So I was just thinking through if I had to come up with 7 rules to selling with intention, what would they be? I mentioned this earlier, we're all in sales. Does everybody believe that now? Do you get that concept? I mean, it's good, it's important. And I think once you're okay with that, I think it's, you don't have to be afraid of it. Okay, be a problem solver. To me, that's the key to sales. Someone asked in one of the classes, is it about like identifying the opportunity or solving the problem? And I think it can be both, but I think the best salespeople actually are problem solvers. So I'll tell you guys, the best thing I do and my team does when we get in front of a client is we'll get on a whiteboard here, and we'll just sit in a room and we'll say, what's your vision? Where do you want to go? What problems do you have? And we'll just start writing stuff down. And we deal with like strategic sales. So we're dealing, a lot of the clients we've had for a while, or call them greenfield accounts that we're going after, but we build relationships over time. It's SaaS, like software as a service, so they're longer term deals. But we do that consistently where we really want to understand. I think that like the power of the whiteboard and the visualization for identifying and just like visioneering, have you guys heard that term? Andy Stanley, pastor, I think out of Atlanta, talks about that. He's written a book about visioneering, like really trying to help a customer understand where they want to go. But I think if you just like change your perspective of, look, I'm just here to solve your problem. And guess what? Sometimes a customer doesn't want to solve the problem, right? Like that's the other thing. I don't have this in the list of 7, but I try to say to a customer, it's okay to say no. You may not want to buy the product that I'm selling, but let's at least do the due diligence. Does it make sense to do that, to have the conversation? And there's something actually about allowing someone to say no that disarms the conversation. Otherwise, what happens, especially in this strategic selling world, you get stuck in like this land of maybe, where a customer is afraid to tell you no, and so you're stuck and you're calling on this potential customer for, it could be years. When if you just gave them permission to say no, you could have saved them a lot of time and yourself a lot of time. So I think that's something I did not realize until later in my career. Okay, this is cliche, but you have 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason. Have you ever heard that saying? It's so true. Like, listen, you don't have to be, the best salesperson isn't the biggest talker. I think the best salesperson is the person that reads the room, if you're in a room, reads the nonverbals, and asks the right question at the right time. And if you hear Dr. K.O. talk, has anybody heard him say, tell me more, that statement? It's a very powerful statement. He learned that from his coach, Chet Scott. I know Chet really well, too. I've learned that from those guys, too. I use that in the business world all the time. Customer says something. Tell me more. And then you just be quiet. Like the thing for salespeople, you got to be okay with silence. Like a lot of stuff happens when you're silent, right? Did that feel a little uncomfortable, maybe a little bit? That pause? Yeah, it is, but when you get used to it, and it's incredible what people will share with you if you can have these strategic pauses and really be a listener. Caring, I mean, there's a lot of people that have said this quote, but no one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. Yeah, so this is huge. Like, if it's this authenticity piece, like, if you can really care about someone you're doing business with, and I know I didn't mention it when I had my family up, but I talked about it's not business, it's personal. There's a saying, it's not personal, it's business. That's crap. I don't like that. Everything's personal. People buy emotionally. Any buyer, you guys know, because you buy stuff. Like, it's an emotional connection. So if you can tap into that emotional connection, and the person knows you care about them, they're going to be more apt to buy, or they're going to be more apt to be upfront and honest with you. Maybe they tell you no, and that's not the worst thing in the world. Okay, The Obstacles, the Way. I'll recommend this book because I think it's really good. Ryan Holiday is the author. I think it's a fantastic book. It's a lot about Stoic philosophy. But the premise is that it's actually taken from a Marcus Aurelius quote, which basically says the impediment to action advances action. So what stands in the way becomes the way. And this, to me, is a game changer rule, because you start to reframe when adversity happens, and you start to look at adversity as fuel. So this is not a sales tactic. This is a life tactic. I think of this as like a resurrection mindset, right? So Jesus died on a Friday, he rose on a Sunday, right? So if we can take that resurrection mindset into everything we do, right? So everything just becomes Good Friday, and what are we going to do about it, right? You fall, you get back up. So John Maxwell says you either win or you learn. So next time you face some type of adversity, reframe it. You're just learning. You're not failing. Okay. Humility plus confidence equals belief. My friend Alan Stein, I stole this from him. He's another author, but I think it's a brilliant equation. Because in sales, you hear a lot of times about, extroversion and confidence and bravado, and it's not what it's about. Like, yeah, you got to be confident in your product, but you got to have the humility to go along with it, right? So if you can combine the two. Now, you don't want to be too humble and too meek, because if you don't have confidence, no one's going to buy from you, right? But and if you have too much confidence, you're going to be selfish, and same thing, no one's going to buy for you either. So it's this combination that's nuanced that leads to belief. And then the last rule I have here that, look, results matter. Always add value. If you think about any conversation, any meeting you're in, do this now. Like, this is a habit you've got to practice. Like, how do you add value to an interaction? Not just a meeting, it could be a conversation with someone. You're talking to your parents, like, you don't necessarily have to say to them, hey, how can I serve you or add value? It's just like an operating system of sorts. You're kind of thinking like, all right, how? And it can be as simple as, how are you doing today? Like, there's nothing more powerful, I think, than sending like an encouraging text to somebody for no reason. Hey, I'm just checking in. How you doing? Or, hey, I was reading this Bible verse. I thought of you. Here it is. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've had people that are like, thank you, I needed to hear that. Like, that's totally a God thing. So, do that as you're reading your Bible. If you think about someone, just send them an encouraging text. I think it's really important. Okay, so I've got a quick exercise I am going to have you guys do. It's going to take about 10 minutes. Is that cool? Can we do that real quick? Can you guys help me pass these out? I'm going to talk you through it as we're passing these out. There you go. So if you have a pen, and I'm going to show this, this is, in all my work and research, this is a really powerful shift, like mindset shift, that I think is really important. But I came across this recently, this stat. So this author, Shad Helmstetter, wrote this. It's fascinating to me. We were told no 148,000 times by the time we're 18 years old, on average. 148,000 times. So whether it's your parents or a teacher or a coach or a friend or whatever, you're told no. You're only told yes, guess. Someone guess. How many times are you told yes on average?
20,000.
20,000? Okay, a little high, actually. Anybody else?
10,000.
5,000 times on average. So think about this. The amount of no's you're told in your life until you're around your age, that's crazy, 148,000 to 5,000. So the reason I bring this up is I think our tendency is to have a negative take on things. I think it's just human nature. And I think about John 10:10 when I think about this. The devil comes to steal, kill, and destroy, right? But we all have a choice. And the rest, anybody know the rest of that Bible verse? John 10:10. Can you say it louder? You got it.
Comes so that you may have life and live it to the full.
There you go, right? The enemy comes, but we have Jesus to fight that. And I think that's beautiful because we all have a choice. So this isn't necessary. This is more, secular or whatever, but I think it's important that from a tactical standpoint, and I wrote this, I'm sorry, it's only half a page. Dr. Ko printed them out for me, and so but I think we can still accomplish this. But I'm gonna take you through this exercise, and I want you to, if you can work with me on it. We'll spend about a minute or so on each one, but this is just a reframe. So it's called SHIFT, and it's an acronym for SHIFT. So the first one is spot the story. So I want you to think about a negative story or belief that's running through your mind right now, and just write that down. And I'll give you about 45 seconds to do that. And if you have a couple, that's fine too. All right, we'll move on to the next one. So number 2, hold it up to the light. So is this thought true? And what's the evidence for and against it? All right, we'll go to the next one. So let's interpret this. So rewrite the narrative. Instead of focusing on what's going wrong, how can you view it as a growth opportunity? And if I'm going too fast, just tell me to slow down. Okay, number 4, let's form a new belief. So what new belief aligns with your goals and values? So let's write a positive, empowering statement that reflects this. All right, and number 5, what's one small action you can take today that supports this new belief, or tomorrow? Okay. When you're done, I'd like you to get into groups of 2 or 3. And if you're comfortable, if you're not comfortable sharing, that's okay. But if you're comfortable, if you can just share with each other, just take like 30 seconds each and share. Are you guys finished? Yeah, cool. How was it? Not too scary, right? No. We'll give you like 15 more seconds. Did you guys all get through? All three of you? Sweet. All right, let's bring it back. Does anybody want to volunteer to share theirs with the group? One brave soul? Yeah? Let's do it. Well, maybe you both do it.
Sure, I'll do mine. So I was talking with the guys a little bit. Number one, I started my story is like, I think that I can only achieve my dream alone? Am I the only one that has the same vision, willingness to put in whatever work is necessary for it? But I just holding it into the light, I don't think it's true. If you look at some of the really successful people in the world, whether they're Christian or not, Mark Zuckerberg, Billy Graham, they all had people around them. They all had people with the same vision and the same willingness to work hard. So how can you rewrite the narrative? I think the biggest thing is asking people, like, do you have the same ambition and vision that I do? I can build my skills of just asking uncomfortable questions, and two, just understanding, am I alone in this or not? Number four, I think, is being joyful in the idea of trying to build a community of people who want to have the same vision and mission of what they want to do, but being willing to do it together and not being selfish and like, hey, I want this to be my success and my name, but it can be everyone's together to impact others. So the action I had was to simply start asking people, is this what you want to do? Do you want to do this with me? Do you have the same vision as me? Same commitment to it. So. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Will. Let's give Will a hand. Thanks. You want to share?
Yeah, I'll share. So for my story, I said, I'm not smart enough to do what I want, and I'm not blameless or willing enough for God to use me. And then my second one, holding up to the light, is I am smart, I'm not the smartest, but I'm willing, and God can use anything, even a kernel of faith. With intention, I said, God can use me, and I have the strength of God instead of my own, which makes me stronger than anything else. And then form a new belief, God will use me in powerful ways. Take action. I will rewrite my identity in Christ, like just on a piece of paper. And what are my passions that are for His glory, and watch them come true.
Awesome. All right. Let's give a hand. Thanks. Thank you for sharing. That's really good. Cool. All right. How was that? Not too scary, right? It's good. It's a simple exercise, but I think it's a powerful reframe. Okay. Here's the last thing I'm going to share with you guys. If I can play this. Let's see if this. Are we Wi-Fi?
Yeah, it should be connected.
So as you watch this, think about just life in general. As you experience adversity, things are going to happen. And it's oftentimes about how you bounce back. I don't know how he does this. This is crazy. Isn't this crazy? Oh, it's not done yet. Last one. Get up. All right, he made it. He made it. All right. Let's see, one more. Okay. I like to show that because I think it's a cool visual to see, like, it's the bounce back, right? That's the resurrection mindset. So I know I'm talking to you about sales today, but I think that it's for life. You've got to, you have the power of Christ in you, right? So you can embrace that mindset. And anytime you fall down, you just get back up and you find, I'm sure you're all meeting amazing friends here at Cedarville. I think it's incredible. Some of my best friends to this day, guys that were in my wedding, are guys I went to college with. So don't take it for granted. It goes fast. You're going to wake up someday and be 48 like me and be like, oh my gosh, that felt like yesterday. Like it really does. But I appreciate it. This is a special place. It really is. It's an honor to be with you. I'm happy to answer any questions or if there's a networking thing, and you guys can connect. I'm on LinkedIn. Feel free to connect. I'm happy to share my cell phone number and email and whatever. Like, I'm happy if you guys need any career advice or anything like that. I'm an open book. So thank you. Yeah, thanks.